Welcome to the Gearbox Podcast with Jimmy Purdy. We're bringing together industry leaders and those in the daily grind. Whether you're a tech looking to level up or a shop owner navigating the business, or just here for some real talk about the automotive world, we're finding the common ground in entrepreneurship and picking up some valuable tips along the way. So buckle up, let's shift into gear. Before we get started, I want to let you know the Gearbox Podcast is powered by the Repair Shops of Tomorrow. It's our exclusive coaching partner. If you're looking to boost profitability, grow your arrow, and streamline operations, our SOT has the tools and expertise to get you there. Shift your shop into the future with the Repair Shops of Tomorrow. We'll just take it from here. At least I'll remember your name, Jim.
Yeah, there you go. And you're Jimmy, right?
Yeah. You know, I just posted something online. It was like people born with the name James really have it pretty tough. And they're like, because you gotta like, are you gonna be professional and go by James? Or are you gonna be the fun guy, be called Jimmy? Or just,
Yeah.
kind of business professional and be called Jim? Or are you going to go with Jimbo and be the goofy one? We got a lot of options here, bud.
We do. We do have a lot of options. We do.
It's almost like too much, like Baskin and Robbins 31 flavors. Like, just give me like chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry, man. I don't want I'm going to be standing in line for way too long with that many options. I just analysis paralysis, right? But speaking of that, I mean, that's the segue into exactly what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So business acquisition, like I was saying before we got on, this is the first time I've talked to somebody about this side of the business. I mean, I think right now there's a lot of talk in the industry. I see a lot of it, a lot of conglomerates, I guess, for lack of a better term, right? Like they're going through and buying lots of shops, these investment capital firms, right?
Yeah,
And this,
it's crazy. There's a lot of consolidating going on in the industry right now.
yeah.
A lot of industry players out there that are looking to acquire shops and auto repair, auto maintenance types businesses across the country, and private equity groups and family offices and industry players that are backed by private equity groups. And then obviously on the flip side of that, there's just a lot of individual people out there that are in their 40s or 50s, Jimmy, and they've always dreamed of owning their own business. They've been had a very successful career in the corporate world. They're making a good living and decent net worth. And they're looking around and going, I've always dreamed of owning my own business, not getting any younger, and they want to buy a business. So you've got a lot of buyers out there right now, Jimmy, both in the individuals just looking to, create an owner operator type position or, a big conglomerate, industry players and private equity groups.
And that's wild to me to think about as I'm doing it for survival, right? Like I was good at taking things apart, putting them back together. I don't even say that I was good at it. It was just, it made sense to me, right? Like I guess
Curiosity.
I was good at getting my butt kicked, right? Like I was like, I didn't mind like doing it wrong. I'm like, damn, I got to do it again, right? And so it's just for survival for me. So when I see these equity firms coming up and saying, man, auto repair is like the most, what's the word for it? I mean, I guess you would have more insight than I do about it, but why is it that they're attracted to auto repair businesses?
Well, Jimmy, what's going on right now is the private equity groups in general. There's like 400% more private equity groups right now in the United States than there was 20 years ago. And private equity just keeps growing and growing and growing. And there's a lot of industries out there that are being consolidated. Auto repair is just one of them. But typically, what is driving people to auto repair business or collision centers and things like that is that it's more of a recession resilient type business. It's an Amazon proof type business. They tend to like the service oriented things. They like the blue collar. So it's like it's checking off a lot of different boxes.
Do you think
And
do you think COVID put a spotlight on it? Is that kind of what we're seeing now, or has it always kind of been there and there's just more people getting into the investment side?
yeah, I think it's always been on the radar, for the things that we mentioned. But you're probably right. COVID probably put a little bit more of a spotlight on it, because that was one of the business types of businesses that was still a necessity and had to stay open. So I think it did put it on there. Jimmy, I think what we got going on right now too is that 40%. This is according to Forbes. This statistic blows my mind. According to Forbes, 40% of all small business owners were born before 1964. So right now we're talking about a lot of people that are in their mid to late 60s or older that have owned their business for 20, 30 years that are on the verge of selling. And that's, I think that's just a huge number, 40%. And
That is huge.
the unfortunate part is that I'll get a call from a business owner, and they're like, yeah, my wife, she retired 5 years ago, and we already got our RV, and she's been begging me to retire, and we want to go travel the country. We want to spend more time with the grandkids. And
Mm.
I start looking at the financials and having conversations, and I'm like, but the business is not going to be very sellable. Or, oh gosh, if you would have just made a couple minor changes a couple years ago, it really could have impacted what you could have sold the business for. Or the
Mm.
business owner, they're 67 years old, and they're like, I need X amount of dollars, from the sale in order to retire. And I have to be the bad guy and your business just isn't worth that much. Like, this is people's retirement.
Yeah.
And they need to start planning it. I think a couple years out before they're ready to sell. I think they need to talk to, either myself or somebody like me that has experience in selling businesses to, one, give them a realistic understanding of what their business is most probably going to sell for, but also having those conversations. Is there anything that they can change or they can make up, or things that they can do a little bit different, so that when they are ready to sell, they're going to maximize that sales price and they're going to get the best terms possible.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's beyond me right now, which it probably shouldn't be. But I think you just, for me, put my head down and I just want to pay rent, right? Like the last thing in the world I'm
Right.
thinking about is my exit plan right now. Like I don't even have the entry plan figured out. You know what I mean? But it's true though, like what you said, and you look around and it's like it's all the old timers that are burned out, that these shops are hanging on by a thread, but they're survivalists, man. They're like, don't knock the baby boomers, man. Like if anything, they know how to freaking survive. And
They
it's
got
just
some
every
great
day
shops too.
they just plug in and
Yeah.
keep going and keep going and keep going, right? And it's interesting because that is what we kind of see, and we don't really need the statistic for it. We see it, right? It's like, yeah,
Right.
it's all these older guys that they'd rather die on the hill than they sell it for any less than what they think it's worth. And it is sad because it's their whole life that's in it, right? And I
Right.
come along at 30 years old or 40 years old, and I'm like, hey, I'll give you 500,000 for it, and they're like, go take a hike, right? And it's like, dude, it's all it's worth. And
Right.
I want to ask you too, like with goodwill, because when I went through the purchasing of the shop, there was the goodwill of the owner, of the
Mm-hmm.
clients. Is there any attainable value that you can put on that stuff, or how does that work when you're going through your analysis?
Okay, so like when we're doing an analysis on a business and trying to come up with a broker's opinion of value, we're trying to tell to the business owner like yourself at the end of the day is, what's the most probable selling price of the business. So when we're looking at over those financials, we're looking at either discretionary earnings or EBITDA. I don't want to get into the difference of that right here, but basically the bottom line number, the net profit of the business, plus depreciation, interest expense, things that we can add back. What's that bottom line number? And just think of it this way to make it clear: is what can a buyer expect to make from the business if it continues to operate how it currently is? And then we're looking at other auto repair businesses in the same subcategory. So if it's a straight general auto repair business, we're looking for other general auto repair businesses. If it's a collision center, we're looking for other collision centers, etc. And we're looking at approximately the same gross sales as them and what they sold for versus how much they were making. And that's how we get that multiplier.
Hmm.
And the key to that multiplier too is that the bigger the business it is, the higher that multiplier will become as well. So somebody making, $150,000 bottom line is going to have a lot lower of a multiplier than that person that's making $2 million bottom line.
Hmm. It always interests me in those situations because sometimes the business is built around the owner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, how do you, once that owner steps away, how can we ensure that it's going to be just as profitable, or have the same, you know, multiplier that's based on the sale of the business? It's really tough. And I mean, I don't know, I've never been in it, but it's just something that I kind of went through a little bit. It's
Yeah.
just in the small thing I did. It was just really tough to, like, well, I know with the particular one I bought, it was basically based around the owner, right? Like without him there, there really was no business. There was no operating systems. There was nothing put in place, right? So the day one I walk in, all the employees left, and I was left with, a phone that was ringing. That was basically it, which is great. I mean, it's great to do that other than opening a business and like starting from scratch and the phone doesn't ring for,
Right, right.
5 to 6 months. Right. So it was an interesting situation, but it really got me kind of dipping my toes in that. And I just wondered if you have owners that you sell their businesses, if that's something they bring up to your attention.
Yeah, what you experience, Jimmy, is pretty common, and that's one of the things that if I'm talking to a business owner and they're thinking about selling a couple years from now, they're 63 and they're like, yeah, we want to sell in 2 or 3 years. That's one of the things we'd be talking about is how involved are they in the business? Are they the business? And it sounds like the business that you acquired, the seller was the business, and
Mm-hmm.
as a business owner, you're thinking about selling in the next couple of years. You need to start moving yourself out so that you're not such a critical role, because buyers are going to look at it and go, gosh, Mr. Owner, when you step aside, a large part of the business is going to go away, or the know-how or the knowledge of how the business operates is going to go away. So you need to start thinking ahead. So it could be as simple as, some of the office type work. Can pass around some of your office type work to the other people in the office? Your techs out there, are you able to, if you're doing all the diagnostics at the shop, that could be scary for a buyer too, because buyer's going to come in and they might be like, oh, you're the main diagnostics person, you're leaving, all that know-how is going out the window. So maybe you can start training the other techs to do diagnostics. There's probably somebody there at the shop or two people there at the shop that enjoy doing that type of stuff. They just need some a little bit more hand holding. So kind of preparing that situation. You should be looking at, as a business owner, how often are you able to go away on vacation for a week or 2 weeks with very little of the shop and the people at the shop calling you and needing your help, and that's a good indication of how engraved are you in that business. And I think for a lot of us small business owners, we take on that role as that, hey, I'm a small business owner. I need to be I need to oversee everything. I need to do everything. And the most successful business owners are kind of doing the opposite. They're like, okay, they're able to delegate. They're able to train other people, put the systems and processes in place so that the business is not as dependent on you as an owner. I know that's a long-winded question, Jimmy. I
No, that's
apologize.
great because and it ties right into like the conversation I have a lot with what is your definition of success, right? And obviously, at the end of the day, I mean, we're talking end game here, right? You're the one that's I don't know, putting the nail in the coffin, I guess. You're the executioner, right? In
Oh
a
my
sense,
gosh.
in a sense, right?
Yeah, I got
You're
you.
putting them out of business, but not really. You're just taking the business
In a
and
good
letting
way.
it
I'm
change
taking
hands.
them to their next stage of life.
Right,
You know,
exactly. Right, and it's not a bad thing. It's going to happen for all of us, right? That's one thing I've
it's a
realized. Like
great thing. It's a great
I get
thing.
old. I didn't know think that was going to happen for me. I thought I was going to be exempt from that rule, but it's not.
Jimmy, I got to stop you there because you know what? It's a fantastic thing, because you think about it, like when you're a kid and you're running around out there and you're building forts in the woods or playing sports or with your friends, and you have summer off and you got all this fun stuff to do, and then that's like 1/3 of our life, and then we grow up, and then we got our second third of our life, and that's a lot of working and having a career and having a family and raising your family. And this third part of your life, this is like great because you don't have to work and you'll have the funds to enjoy retirement. You can travel and you can be with family. And this should be a time that should be embraced. I think it's a time that should be embraced.
As long as you do the 2/3 correctly.
That's true. And you
You know,
know
and,
what?
and
I got to tell you, 50% of all businesses are sold because of the 5 Ds. And the 5 Ds have nothing to do with retirement. The 5 Ds are things that are unexpected. Like there's a death, there's a disability, there's disagreement with a partner, the business is under distress. So 50% of all business deals that happen on a national level
there's
is
got to be
because
divorce thrown in there too, right?
Divorce was the other
There it
one.
is. Okay.
That's
I was
yeah.
waiting for
There
that
you
one.
go. So you may be 35 years old and never be thinking about selling your business, and then you might have to unexpectly. So whether
Right.
you're looking to sell or not, your business should always be in the position so you can sell if need be.
It's a yeah, I concur. And I bring that up because the success conversation we have a lot, right? And I think it's and not to like talk down on anybody that wants to live their life this way, but I want to open my doors at 11 o'clock. I want to go home at 3. I want to go fishing on Friday. And if I can run a
Hmm.
business where it allows me to do that, I'm successful. And I agree with that. Like that's the whole point. To own a business is to make your own schedule, right? Like I think that's the entrepreneur's dream. And for me in the 20s, right? Like that's what I wanted. Like I want to be able to call the shots, and then you
Yeah.
start realizing what shots you got to call, and then you got to realize the decisions that you have to make, and it's like, wow, this is a lot more responsibility than if I just work for somebody, right? And then it's like, oh, then I'm going to make my own hours. Then you realize you're working 4 or 5 more hours more than everybody else. So it's like, it kind of flips on you a little bit, right? So then you want to take that and use that as motivation to say, you know what, I do run my own business. I'm just going to shut the doors at 3 o'clock and go fishing. I win, right? And I think
Right.
that's kind of giving up a little bit. And I don't want to make it sound like if that's what you're doing and you're happy with it, like but at the end of the day or the end of your 2/3 of your life, like where does that put you? You're not in a very good situation. And for me, I saw it happen firsthand, right?
No, really.
And that's the business that I went through and I saw, and it's like there really wasn't much, and I tried as much as I can to help them out, but like at the end of the day, it's like there's just not a business here that can be passed on where you're going to get royalties or that I can pay you, $500,000, right? And even though he spent 35 years of his life at it, there was just nothing at the end of the day to take home with him. And part of it was, well, I just want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And you just do that
Yep.
every day, and all of a sudden 30 years goes by and there's nothing left. But
Yep.
it feels like a win in that meantime, right? Like, yeah, we go out, we go party, we have a good time. I buy everyone dinner. Like, life is good when it's good, but then what's at the end of it? And it's just a realization that I had, and the conversations I have with a lot of people about what your definition of success is. And I think we all kind of forget that the end game is coming.
Yeah. And
that
yeah,
that
it,
Mr.
it
Jim
really
Parker
is.
as the Grim Reaper is coming to
No,
give
it
you your
is.
retirement, and then be like, your retirement's not worth anything, and $100,000 today is $100,000, 10 years ago is a lot less than it is today, right? So even if you set it up right, how many conversations you have like that where they feel like they have a certain number and you just got to show them like, look, for 10 years ago you were on track, but now it's not because you haven't kept up with the times.
It happens all the time where the seller is like, "Oh, I need X amount of dollars," and they're ordered to retire, and I have to sit there and go, "Your business most likely is going to sell for half that." And they just pull these numbers out. It's not what you need or want; it's what the
Mm.
market's been is willing to bear, and that's the realistic picture you need to be looking at as a business owner. Is what's the market really going to pay? And I think too many people, they're not talking to a broker until they're ready to sell, and then they're like, okay, we want to sell now. And it's simple things like, Jimmy, like one of the biggest things I talk to business owners about is that they're running personal expenses through the business. They're trying to
Mm.
save on those taxes. And I'm not, look, I've seen everything. I've been helping people sell businesses for nearly 25 years. Jimmy, I specialize in helping people sell auto repair, auto maintenance type businesses. I'm not here to judge them, but that's probably the biggest thing that I want to get out there is if somebody's thinking about selling in the next couple of years, or you're not thinking about selling in the next couple of years, stop running personal expenses through the business. And let me give you an example. If
Yeah,
you
please.
for every dollar that you are, either not reporting the cash on the business, or you're writing off a personal expense on that dollar, even if you're in the highest tax bracket possible, you're saving 37 cents on that dollar. But when you go to sell your business, you could be losing out on $3, $4, $5 or more on that same dollar that you're saving 37 cents on. So you're saving
Mm.
cents in taxes and you're losing out on dollars when you go to sell your business. And that's probably the biggest mistake that I see business owners make when they're ready to sell. Just stop writing the
and that
personal expenses
and
through the
that's like the
business.
stepping over a dollar to pick up a dime, right? I
Yep.
guess that's where that
Yep.
came from, right? It
Yeah,
sounds like.
exactly. And what you
Now,
said, client concentration, I mean, not client concentration, you know, the owner being, you know, the business, that's another
yeah,
thing that we need to have conversations about, or client concentration. You're a collision shop and you're getting all your work from one insurance provider, and you know, that buyer buys the business and that walks away, or you're dealing with a lot of fleet work, and that, you know, and, you know, the one fleet client that makes up 40% of your business. You know, those are the kind of things that are going to scare buyers. And those are the conversations that you need to be having with a broker, whether it's me or somebody else, just somebody that's seasoned experience, that knows the industry, knows about, knowledgeable about selling businesses, and kind of get you on that plan so that you make sure you can sell the business
what are
as
some?
best you
So
can.
you kind of did a little of them as far as like that, but what are some little nuggets that you can give away as far as if in say in my position or anybody that's in their mid or late 30s, things that you can start putting together now that will put you on that path of success or the path to get the most for your business when you're ready to sell in say 20 years or 30 years.
You know,
What
I
and
think
what
the
what attracts the buyers?
You know, I think that's two different conversations. I think like cleaning up your financials, having well organized financials, that's a conversation. You know, for somebody that's, you know, a couple years out, the client concentration or the owner's role, that's somebody couple. But for somebody that's your age, it's like 20, 30 years away. You know, I think a couple things. One is, you know, like you said, be out there busting it. You're at that age where you have the energy and you have the enthusiasm, and go out there and hit it as hard as you can. I'm not saying work just to work, but you know, it's not how many hours you work, but how focused you are while you're working and you're trying to build your business as big as you possibly can. You know, I've talked to business owners that are in their, you know, mid 60s, and they're looking to retire, and they're like, you know, hey, when you get my financials, I just want to let you know the last 4 or 5 years, we're it's about the same, or we're growing just a little tiny bit. They're like, hey, yeah, you know, I've been making $600,000 or $700,000 a year for the last 4 or 5 years. I hit a certain point in my life where I was like, hey, I'm doing really well financially. The business is going very smoothly. I've got got really good systems in place, and and I'm at that age where I don't want to keep growing the business, because every time you grow the business, you're adding that stress. And so they're not, you know, that 60-year-old person, 65-year-old person might be making a lot of money, not having to put as much work into it. You're younger, go out there and bust it. And I think another big thing is get involved with like a peer group. You know, and you know, find other auto repair shops that are in the same subcategory as you, anywhere in the country, that are some of the best, and get on a call with them for an hour and a half, 2 hours once a month. We have, I belong to a peer group. There's 12 of us, business intermediaries around the country, and we tell each other everything and anything, and we've all become so much better because of how we share. I think peer groups is a huge thing.
Yeah, that's, I mean, anytime you can network, I feel it's been beneficial. And it removes the cloak of trying to like keep everything hidden, you know?
Yep.
I know from personal experience when I first started, it was like I just keep stuffing money in the account and then I'll just check it every couple of months, right? Just like, and hopefully there's something in there. Just like totally like take a back seat and just put my head down and grind away, and then don't tell anybody, right? Keep it all a secret, keep it away from everybody, because you don't want anybody to like, I don't know, just show what a failure you are or how bad you're doing. And
Yep.
it's interesting. And then you realize the more you're transparent about it, the more people start giving you advice, whether it be ill or not. But it's like advice is advice, right? Like all the information is good information, and you just keep growing on it. And I think like, not to step away from the business talk we're having, but like even with technicians or advisors, they're having a hard time taking that ego hit. Hey, you might misdiagnose that, right? Or hey,
Yeah.
that repair didn't go right. It didn't fix what the problem was, or you didn't get that sale from that customer. Like, and they just want to hide that and move on to the next instead of taking that opportunity and saying, what did I do wrong so it doesn't happen again? And I mean, as me taking the leap from a technician to a shop owner, man, my ego had to take a huge hit. Like I had to like constantly be like, because as a technician, you get to a point where like you're pretty good, right? Like I can avoid most mistakes, and it's like then my head just starts growing, right? Because it's like everything I touch is like is fixed, know, and
Jimmy,
then I,
that's why you're going to be that's why you're probably a very good business owner, or going to be a great business owner, because I'm going to tell you, like, I've sold, most of the businesses I sell now are businesses that sell for $1 million or more. But I've worked with business owners in the past. I've been doing this a long time, like really small businesses, and I've worked with really big businesses. And the small business that is not making very much money, they tend to be. First of all, I think all business owners are very, very confident people. You're not going to go in the business for yourself if you're not confident. But I
that's a good
think
point.
that small business owner that is very, very small and never grows. It's
Listen, if you're anything like me, you know the struggles of inconsistent car count and tight margins. That's where Repair Shop of Tomorrow comes in. They help shop owners like us increase sales, improve efficiency, and grow our businesses with proven strategies. Check them out at repairshopoftomorrow.com today and start growing tomorrow.
because they think they know everything, and they can't delegate to anybody. They don't take anybody's advice, and they're just kind of a know-it-all. And I don't mean that in a bad sense. They're just overconfident. Nobody can do anything as good as them. The people that I see end up selling their businesses
I've
for
never met anybody like that in this industry.
those
As
people that end
as
up selling
as 90% of the people listening are relating to it.
the people that have sold their businesses for a couple $1 million or 20 million or 30 million, they have a different mindset. Like, they're like you. They're like, I don't know everything. I need to reach out and I need to learn this from this person. I need to, you're not going to blindly listen to your CPA, blindly listen to your attorney, blindly listen to your business consultant, but you're listening to them. You're digesting what they're saying, and then you're making a good decision based off what they're saying. And you realize there's a lot of people out there that know a lot more than you. And you're going out and you're finding the ones that you can trust, that you think are honest, that you like, and you're embracing them, and you're embracing their knowledge. And
Man, that was
I
a
really think,
dissection right there.
yeah,
That was
I'm giving you
dissected
really
my
long
mind a little
answers
bit.
to everything,
No,
Jimmy.
that
I
was that. I mean, you
apologize.
just like to totally dissected like my thought process too, and to be, I mean, on that, I wanted to like take that even further, is because sometimes, man, in the beginning, I'm just so exhausted mentally, like you only have so many decisions you can make in a day, right? And
Yeah,
until you start delegating, you just get decision fatigue, and I know I did. Like, you get so many decisions you have to make over and over and over, like for all these, and you get to a point where you're done. I can't do anymore. And so I would
yeah,
blindly start listening to consultants and coaches, and because it's like, all right, that sounds like an answer to me. I'm taking it and I'm running with it. And now I realize that sometimes I made a mistake, and I realized it was advice. It was supposed to be taken with a grain of salt, right? It wasn't like, here, just take this and do exactly that. It was just
right,
the best
right.
advice, and you broke it down. Like, I need to take that stuff and make my educated decision based on that information. But man, you get so overwhelmed with decision fatigue, you kind of start taking that stuff and running with it. Just like the conversation we're having right now. Like, you don't need to do exactly what we're talking about. It's just take Jim's advice and then make the best use of it. Don't
And
listen to this podcast and just be like, this is exactly how I'm going to set my life up.
yeah, talk to your techs and your office manager. Instead of coming to you as the business owner with a problem, come to with a situation, and tell them that don't come to me with a problem. Come to me with a situation and a
Hmm.
resolution to that situation.
I love that.
Because
Yeah.
that's because you get 5 employees that come to you all with a problem within the first 2 hours you walk into the shop. That's 5 problems you got to deal with. Within
I
the
mean, I'm
first
I'm,
two
I'm calling
hours.
I'm calling Jim Parker and give him the keys. Find someone to buy this place, man. I'm done.
And most of those employees be like, they can make the decision themselves. They
Yeah,
they, they can. They know their job. Or they got a good estimate. So
yeah, it's amazing, and I don't understand the mindset. And if I did, I mean, obviously, I'd be in a much better situation. I'd have the answer for everybody, right? If you could figure out why that happens, but uh, it just goes back to taking accountability and having the right team members. I mean, how does that affect when you deal with clients looking to sell their business? Is it all about the people that are invested in that business?
yeah, I think that when you're selling a business, it's about people in general. It's like when you're selling a house or a piece of commercial property. nobody could care less who owned the business before or who owned that property before, who lived there, etc. But when you're selling a business, I'm a firm believer that the buyer has to like and trust the seller. So the seller has to be likable and trustworthy themselves. And the buyer's going to do their due diligence once they go under contract, but they still got to feel good about them. And then, the seller usually wants to feel good about the buyer. I found the best sellers to be the people that my very first phone call with them, they're like, I want to maximize my sales price, but I also want my customers to be taken care of. I want my employees to be taken care of. And sometimes they even say, I want my suppliers to be taken care of, so they're looking for that culture fit with the buyer. And then the buyer, one of the biggest questions that's going to be coming out of their mouth is, will the employee stay on post closing?
Mm,
You know, do you think they will leave? Do you think that is there somebody that can step up and do some work? And what's the feeling going to be once you as the owner leave? There's going to be a lot of questions about those employees, and it's a catch-22, Jimmy, because it's funny because on one end, the buyer wants to have key employees there that can step up and take over the owner's that's selling's job and
sure.
spread that out. And then they also have, they also come in, that person can help train them. But on the flip side of that, then the buyer gets worried that, oh, there's a key employee, not only losing the owner, but what if that key employee leaves? So it's kind of a catch-22, but those are just things that you have to talk about. And there's strategies to, help ensure that employee stays around post closing and keep them on from a monetary standpoint. And but the big thing is you don't want anybody to know that your business is for sale. You don't want your employees to know, your customers to know, suppliers, competitors.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going through your website and I saw that in there, the confidentiality deal, right? And that's interesting to me because for me, I just feel like transparency is the way to go. So I feel like if I'm planning on selling next year, like I'm letting everyone know right now, hey, you guys, like there's going to be an owner, like, and I'm trying to prep everyone, get everybody to know. I kind of want my client base to know. So I'm sending out emails and letting everyone know, hey, like we're in the process of selling. You're gonna be noted, but I'm gonna make sure it's going to good hands. What's the thought behind making sure that it's confidential?
Yeah. So, like the employees, the big thing with employees is that usually don't like uncertainty. And when there's a lot of uncertainty, they get uncomfortable. You got to remember that employee is either paying their rent, they're paying a mortgage, they got a car payment, they're putting food on the table, they got a family. And a big thing that's going to be running through their head is, oh, okay, the owner is going to sell the business. Am I going to have a job? Am I just going to show up one day and maybe the business owner is just going to close the shop down? Or will he actually sell the business and the new owner come in and get rid of me as an employee? And they have to think about themselves and their family. They might start looking, you know, somewhere else, for a job. And the customer, you got a car. It's a $40,000 car, and you're going to go drop that off to get fixed. And there's this big sign out front. It says for sale. How comfortable are you going to feel that you're going to leave your car there behind? Is that shop going to be there next week? If there was a sign out front like that. And competitors could use that against you in marketing and when they're trying to land clients, and just all the way around. It's not a good thing to let people know that the business is for sale until the business
Interesting.
is actually
That's where
sold.
the experience comes in for sure. Because I'm obviously my thought was 180 degrees from that. So that's where you have the experience to know that's the better way to go. And it feels a little, I don't know, it feels a little under cloak, like under veil, right? Like there's this huge thing going on. We're not going to let anybody know till the last day. But I feel like that's probably, hearing it from that aspect, that's probably the better way to go, right? And then you just kind of do a seamless transition. You get everybody warmed up to it. I just feel like as a client, if you weren't aware and say 6 months go by after the new owner comes in, and all of a sudden they show up and it's a new owner. But I guess if it's the same staff, then it really shouldn't make too much of a difference.
Yeah, yeah, and it's think about it. The customers, like at any kind of auto repair shop, at the end of the day, they want to make sure that they trust the shop and they've been getting good work. They're hopefully satisfied with the price and the service. That's what you just got to continue. Just because the business has been sold, a customer is not going to be like, "Oh, the business sold, so I'm going to go find another shop." They're going to be like, "Oh, the business sold. Okay, let's see if they continue giving me the same service and price that I have been getting coming to this shop for the last 15 years. And really,
Interesting.
if you're selling a business that's successful, you want to make as little changes as possible as the buyer post closing. It's when you buy a bad business that's been underperforming that you put that sign out front that says, now under new management. But if you're buying a successful business, you really don't want to be pounding your chest up and down, screaming to the world that you just bought the business. You want to kind of slowly get into it now. But I do want to say, Jimmy, like once in a while, I do get a business owner that says, I want my employees to know, or I want key employees to know. And, we can have those conversations. And sometimes those conversations happen before closing. But typically, you do want to keep it confidential without anybody knowing the business is for sale.
That makes sense. What's a good tactic that you've seen or you've been able to employ with breaking that ice or letting employees know? Because I mean, whether it's new ownership, new management, new, even just having a new like A-level technician come in, that's going to be the new diac tech. Like I think you can apply that kind of thought process to anything across the board. But like in your situation with bringing in a new owner, what's some tactics that you've been able to use successfully that kind of breaks that ice?
I think the most successful business transactions are when the seller, like I said before, the first phone call I have with them, they're telling me how important it is that their employees and customers are taken care of post closing, and I think that sets it up all the way through because then, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to not only get their business sold, but maximize their sales price, get the best terms for them, but also find an appropriate buyer that fits the culture of the business and what they're looking for. So as the seller's going through this process and they're talking to the buyers, you know, one of the things, a lot of that for them is, oh, I think they would be great for our employees. Oh, I like that this. Oh, they could be offering benefits to our employees that they've never been able to offer before. So they start asking buyers about benefits, like industry buyers and things like that. So on the day of closing, and we actually close on the business, if there's a key employee or a couple of key employees, you probably want to pull them aside and have a conversation respectfully with them separate. But the best thing to do when you're announcing it to everybody is just to thank them so much for everything that they've done for the business over the years and how proud you are of been working with them, and explain to them why you're going to have to be moving on, and that you've spent months now working with professionals to find a really great buyer for the business. And this, and introduce the buyer that, by the way, this is the buyer, and this is why we chose this particular buyer, and you kind of hit on the key points why you think that buyer would be good for them. And then the buyer should say immediately, be like, I am so glad that you guys are all here. And one of the biggest reasons I bought this business was because of you guys. And I know how special you guys are. And I'm really looking forward. No, I want to let you know that nothing's going to change right off the gate. You're going to keep your salaries. We're actually going to be adding benefits to you. We're going to be adding blah, blah, blah if they are. And, I'm looking forward to sitting down with each one of you individually to discuss how we can make the business even better or make your job more satisfying to you or more efficient. And da da da. And then meet with each employee one on one. And usually you kind of do a scheme, the situation like that. Everybody, it fits good for everybody.
I really think you could use that across the board there, right? Like that's just good management, with
Yeah.
anybody coming in, just being, upfront and then the why. Like why is this change happening? I think that's the most important thing. I mean, just listening to it from my technician mind listening to it, right? If I'm in that situation, like just the why helps, right? Because we all
Yeah,
have to make decisions.
Jimmy, you were talking earlier, you're asking like, well, somebody's 20, 25 years away. What can they do to, build their business? And I was given a couple things like peer groups and, keep learning and, work hard. But I think another thing with that is that, treat every customer so important. Just try to please not volumes, but think of that customer as an individual that you really want to please. Treat your employees not just, oh, that's my employees, that's my labor force, but get to know them as an individual. Like, you're going to be a better business person the more you realize that you're in the people business. whether that is building a good relationship with your employees and them trusting you and you trusting them, and they have your back and you have their back, and your customers, they know that you're treating them well and you're being honest with them and you're looking out for them. And even the suppliers, this whole mindset of got to beat up your suppliers, I don't want to beat up my suppliers. I want good profit margins. I understand that, but at the end of the day, if I have an emergency and if I owned a shop and I had to get a part down to my shop ASAP, who are they more willing to bend over backwards for? That person that just beats them to death on pricing every which way they can, or that customer that's like, hey, we're in this together. I realize we both need to make money, and I respect this relationship, and I'm not constantly beating you up.
That's
So
true. And I feel like the stigma, is there stigma in your side of the industry where everyone thinks that the big bad owner is going to come into town and just focus on numbers and do exactly that, right? They're just going to come in with the 10-foot pole and just start whacking everybody over the head. And I feel like that's the stigma, right? Like anytime, like, oh, you're selling the business, like for some reason we have this imaginary person that's going to come in that's a Wall Street, guru that's just going to come
yeah.
in and like and just make everyone's life so hard. Is there a stigma behind that you've found?
Yeah, and the first thing that the first thing that's going to grab their attention, a buyer's attention, whether it's an individual or an industry player, a private equity group, professional buyer, the first thing that's going to grab their attention is the numbers. How much is it for sale for? How much am I going to make? What's the gross sales? Blah blah blah. That's what's going to grab their attention. But once that grabs their attention and they look at the financials, they're going to look at it as on a very broad look and just make sure the numbers make sense. But for buyers at that point, they want to know about the business. What's the culture of the business like? What are all the things you can't not necessarily see? They're going to go to visit their website. They're going to want to talk to the seller. At some point, they're going to want to visit the shop. They're going to have a lot of questions about the employees. They're going to have a lot of questions about the seller themselves, why they're going to sell, what are they going to do post closing. Like, they want a good feeling of the business all the way around. Is the equipment in good condition? Has it been maintained over the years? What are we sitting? And then once they go under contract with them, then it gets back to the numbers, and they dig really, really deep into the numbers, Jimmy. So the numbers are extremely important. But think of it more as a bookend. It grabs their attention in the front end. It's going to seal the deal in the back end. That those numbers need to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt once they go under contract and they're in their due diligence. But there's going to be that part in between that's a lot of the look and the feel and the emotion and the culture of the business that makes a big decision whether they want to move forward, and if they do, what kind of price they're going to put on that business.
It's interesting you said that, because I was going to ask you what's more important, and it sounds like there isn't. It sounds like
No.
business is very complicated.
I'm going to tell you some horrible statistics. You want to hear some horrible statistics?
Oh, I love horrible.
It's estimated that only 10 to 20% of businesses for sale actually sell. So 80 to 90% of the businesses for sale do not sell. That's a national statistic. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
And 50% of the deals that go under contract fall apart before they get to the closing table, which is just blows my mind. So when you have a good, now my sales, I sell businesses. It's, I'm selling 90% of the things I take to the market. I am selective up front, but we also got a great team and we got great processes and strategies, all that stuff aside. When you are a business owner and you're looking to sell your business, you got to price it reasonably on the marketplace, and it's got to be handled properly, because what happens in the marketplace, the reason 80, 90% of the businesses for sale don't sell is most of the stuff on the marketplace is either bad businesses, or the businesses are overpriced, or they're not being handled properly, or everything above. And, all these buyers have been they usually been looking for a couple months to a couple years. So when you have when your business hits the market, your business is standing out. All those eyeballs are on your business, and it's not going to last that long. So you want to make sure you have your I's dotted, your T's crossed. You got a good plan when you go to the market so you can capitalize on that situation, because the more buyers you have looking at your business, the better chance you're going to get multiple offers on your business. And when you get multiple offers on your business, that's where you're maximizing your sales price and getting the best terms possible.
Hmm. It also seems like just having not scrambling at the end, right? Like from what I've picked up from our conversation, it's like it just seems like the sooner you get that stuff in order, the more prepared you are when that day comes. Instead of waiting until you're 60 years old and spending 3 years getting your finances together so it looks, organized. Like if they're always organized, then you're always ready, right? And then
Yeah.
and then you're like, hey, I'm ready to sell. Here's all my stuff, and then you don't have poor Jim having to like make your business look good. Just like it already looks good, right?
Well, it goes back to the 5 Ds that we were talking about. 50% of all deals are the business that are sold are done that was an unexpected sale. The divorce, disability, distress, da, da, da,
Oh
da.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's one reason why you should keep your business like that, in shape all the time. But also, if you position your business to be more sellable, and you're not thinking about selling your business, I can tell you, you will have a better run business that's a lot more stress free for you as well. And then on top of that, you never know. Maybe you want to go out and get a loan so you can buy your own building. Or maybe you want to go out and get a loan because you want to open up get a second location or acquire a second location. So having those good financial records that we were talking about earlier, even if you're not selling, could come in handy if you need to get a bank loan.
Mm.
And also you can then better analyze how well your business is actually performing because the P&Ls are really done appropriately and not the high taxes
Yeah.
or high
not, to,
income for tax
not to
purposes
save 37 cents.
on the dollar. You're
Yeah.
losing out on dollars.
So on that, do you do like business valuations if someone wanted you to go through and see what it's worth, not put it on the market, but just if they were curious, is that something you offered?
Yeah, that's the first step. I'll do a broker's opinion of value. If somebody's looking to sell their business now or in the next couple of years, I'll do a broker's opinion of value. Tell them what the most probable selling price is, and there's no cost for that, and no obligation to use my services. But I only do that for people that are like thinking about selling their business in the next couple of years.
Oh, okay. So
And,
it's
and to me, it's
in the
building
hope
a
in the
goodwill with
hopes
them.
in the
Yeah,
hope that they're going to sell it, right? Or if they
yeah,
listen to the Gearbox podcast, they could reach out to you, right?
exactly. I would
Not to
love to
flood your
talk to
email
anybody from
box,
the
but
Gearbox. Please do.
yeah, I mean it's important to know. I mean, and if nothing else, it gives you a better night's sleep or lights the fire under your butt to get your stuff together, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like the false sense of entitlement or overconfidence. I mean, I think that's rampant in the auto industry. I mean, especially technician turned to shop owner. It's like if you can fix anything, like you can fix a business, and then you're paying your bills, paying your rent, and you're like, man, this place has got to be worth $5 million. Like I'm doing a great job, and then talk to someone like you, and you're like, no, you got a lot of
No,
work to
you
do.
you know what though? You know what though? I mean, gosh, you did something though. You know how I think most I think in our country, in the United States of America, I think most people grow up with the belief that part of the American dream is owning your own business. And
Sure.
I think so many people dream of owning their own business, dream about it, but very few people actually do it. So I think those of us that do go into business for ourselves, whether you're small, you turn out to be huge, you turn out to be the next Steve Jobs, or anything in between, you should be proud. You did something what most people were afraid to do, and you did it. And the only thing
Mhm.
this is, I feel like in life, we're not competing against each other. We're not competing against each other. We're competing against ourselves and ourselves only. I do think that there's two people you need to impress in your life. Do you know who I think the two people are that I think everybody needs to impress in their life is?
I think one of them's me, and the other one isn't here.
One of them is your 8-year-old self, and the other one's
Oh,
your 80-year-old self.
oh, wow, that's deep.
And
I
if
like
you
that.
and you can impress your
That was a
8-year-old
lot better. That
self.
was a lot better than my answer.
But you should be proud. You built the business, so like I never critique a business owner. Business owners do. Gosh, they're living it. That's so fantastic.
That's a good point. That's a good outlook. I mean, I think I forget that. I definitely do. Because we all just put Steve Jobs on a pedestal and we're like, if we're not making it like him, then we're failing, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're like an A level, like a type A personality business owner, like you have to exceed what, Warren Buffett and Steve Jobs has done, or you've failed. And we forget like I forget how far I've come, right? From having almost zero in the account to where we're at. Like you just forget that stuff and how much work it takes and how special those people are, right? Like that's the other thing. Like you look at Steve Jobs, like that's a special individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah, don't put it. Don't like. I mean, use him as inspiration, but also like it's just not going to happen, man. A lot of us are just average, and that's totally okay.
Exactly. And that's okay. That's why I say you're only competing against yourself. You're only competing against what abilities you were born with. You know what I mean? As an individual.
Yeah,
We all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. And I feel like if you can just go through life and you can be better than what you with better than the talents and the skills you were born with, you've lived a great life. Even if you end up being a hundredth of net worth of somebody else, or 100, it doesn't even have to be monetarily. My point is we're not competing against each other.
yeah.
Competing against yourself. That's all. We all
When it co-
we're all running our own race. And we should all be cheering on each other,
we should be,
you know?
should
Somebody
be.
else that we know does something and they did something, they became really successful, they landed a big deal, and it's sad so many of us are like, oh gosh, I wish they would. No, cheer them on, cheer them on, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I think that comes with age and wisdom.
Yeah,
Once
maybe.
all the testosterone is burned out of us when we get to our 30s.
But you know what? I think you've got the personality. You're going to kill it. You're going to kill it because I think the biggest motivator is fear in life, and you want to learn, and you're motivated by the fear.
I'm blissfully ignorant is what it is. And I feel like the more I learn, the more I start not shutting down, but I'm like, oh, I see why no one's doing it like that. But if you don't know any better, you're like, yeah, I'll dive in. I don't care. Like, like you don't see the sharks in the water unless you know they're there, right? So you're like, I'll
That's
dive
so
right in.
true. That's
Yeah,
so true. Like a lot of things. Like if you when you jump in and you do something, once you know what you jumped in, because usually we jump into stuff we don't really know what we're in for. But
yeah.
those once we know what we're in for, like I don't know if I would have jumped into that if I would have known all this. You know what I mean? Like it's good to be dumb.
Blissfully ignorant is what I call it.
Yes.
Try to church it. Up a little bit. Well,
That's
Jim, I
great.
think this has been extremely insightful. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, you are the auto repair boss. I like that.
Yeah. You can visit my website at www.theautorepairboss.com. I'd love to chat with anybody that wants to talk.
Get a
I
business
appreciate you having
analysis.
me on, Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean this is important stuff, and it's definitely missed. It's something you don't think about. And I think a lot of us don't need to worry about it for a long time, but it just comes, right? We don't
Yeah.
even have to try because the day our end is coming, right? Whether we wanted to or not. And it's one thing I've learned with like you brought up getting a loan and stuff like that is like now I'm scrambling for 3 weeks trying to get all my paperwork together to try to go submit to see how much money I can get. And it's like, man, I'm just gonna keep it like this. So the next time I'm ready, I'm like everything's organized. But also like going through the process of me buying the shop that I did, it was definitely eye opening to see someone spend 30 some odd years of their life that was passed down from their father, and then at the end of the day it's like I'm giving them less than $100,000 for it. It's like, man, that is just, I wish I could do more, right? But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, business is business, and you have to make sure like I'm not overextending myself to get something that where I could just start it from scratch. So it's like, look, if you want this, I can give it to you. Otherwise, I'm just going to walk away because you're not going to get it more anywhere else. Um, and yeah, it's like, what am I going to do in 30 years? I want to make sure that I'm set up, that my time was used wisely, and that all the employees that spending their time in here are also going to be taken care of as well. Because that's part of the equation too, right? If you
Yeah.
set it up for success, and then you have a big, I don't know, I don't call them an entity, but if you have an investor come in, right, and you can actually have the proper negotiation because you have something that's worth something, your employees are going to be taken care of. And that's the gist I'm getting from it.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
We're learning something. I learned something
Absolutely.
today.
Well, you acquiring that business is a great way. You might want to keep acquiring shops, over the years. Maybe you own a 10 shop chain someday.
There's that blissful ignorance starting to melt away because I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that again. Now I know too much.
That's great.
Thanks again, Jim. I appreciate your time. All right, Gearboxers. You know I keep things running smooth, engines and beards alike. That's why I trust the Bearded Brotherhood for top quality, all natural beard care. From their best selling Woodsman to my favorite, Thieves, they keep me looking sharp and smelling fresh. Check this out. Get 15% off every order with the code Gearbox15 at thebeardedbrotherhood.co/Gearbox15. Your beard will thank you.